Rip it out. I don't care what it is. Rip it out and throw it away.
That's what I heard through my dash cam's cloud feed. The HOA president ripping a hidden camera out of my dashboard with both hands. She'd used her master key to break into my car for the 23rd time. The camera caught her face in 4K, and the 6 words she said next: "I will bury that man's family." She didn't know the footage had already been uploaded to an encrypted server. She didn't know the man whose car she'd just vandalized was a deputy U.S. Marshal with a federal warrant already signed. She'd spent 3 weeks searching my Challenger because the tinted windows scared her, called the cops, called CPS, keyed my door, booted my wheel, and now she'd recorded her own confession. Would you have stopped her or let her finish? 6 in the morning, underground garage. My phone buzzes on the nightstand and I roll over to check the dashcam feed. There she is again, blonde hair shellacked into a helmet, white HOA blazer buttoned to the throat like body armor, clipboard in one hand, master key in the other. She walks straight to my Dodge Challenger, glances left, glances right, and jams that key into the driver's door lock. Wiggles it, jiggles it, tries again. The key doesn't work on this model. Never has. But Shelley Prescott has tried it 23 mornings in a row now. 23. I've got every single attempt recorded in crisp 1080p. She thinks the tinted windows hide drugs. She thinks the supercharger hides criminal intent. She has absolutely no idea that the man who owns this car carries a U.S. Marshal badge in his back pocket. What would you do if your HOA president broke into your car every single day? Drop your answer in the comments. Because what I did, she never saw it coming. Let me back up. My name is Colton Mercer, 39 years old, Deputy United States Marshal, District of Colorado. Before that, I spent 11 years chasing fugitives through the hollers of eastern Kentucky. Coal country, meth country, the kind of place where a warrant service meant body armor, long guns, and a prayer that the guy inside the trailer didn't have a Rottweiler and a death wish. I was good at it. Too good. The kind of good that gets your home address leaked on the Sovereign Citizen Forum. The kind of good that puts your wife on a first-name basis with every dispatcher in Pike County. So when the transfer opportunity came up, Colorado District, fugitive operations out of the Denver field office, Nora and I didn't even hesitate. My wife is an ER nurse. Unshakable. She'd held pressure on a stabbing victim at 3 a.m. while 7 months pregnant with our daughter Lily. But even Nora had her limit. "I want Lily to see mountains," she said, "not mugshots on our kitchen table." Fair enough. We found Summit Pines Estates in Arapahoe County, foothills south of Denver, 180 homes behind a wrought iron gate with a guard shack that was never actually staffed. Good school district, mountain views from the second-floor windows, underground parking garage with assigned spots. The HOA dues were steep, $420 a month, but the neighborhood was clean, quiet, and safe. Or so we thought. The Challenger came with me from Kentucky. Blacked out Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat. Every panel dark as a bruise. Windows tinted to the legal limit, and maybe a shade beyond. Under the hood sat a 6.2-liter supercharged V8 that made 717 horsepower and a sound like God clearing his throat. I bought it with overtime pay. 3 years of overtime pay to be specific. 3 years of kicking doors at 4 a.m., pulling fugitives out of crawl spaces, and sleeping in my truck on stakeouts. That car was my one indulgence. My church. My therapy session on 4 wheels. The first time I pulled into the underground garage at Summit Pines, the Hellcat's exhaust note bounced off the concrete walls like rolling thunder. The whole structure hummed. I could smell the mix of cold concrete, motor oil, and that particular dusty staleness that lives in every parking garage on Earth. I eased into spot 147, killed the engine, and sat there for a second enjoying the silence. That's when I noticed her. Standing 6 feet from my bumper, arms crossed, clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield. Shelley Prescott, HOA president, 7 consecutive years, ran unopposed every single time, because nobody else wanted the job, and the 3 people who did want it mysteriously received violation notices until they sold their homes and left. She was mid-50s, heavy-set, with a blonde bob that hadn't changed shape since the Clinton administration. She drove a white Cadillac Escalade with a custom license plate that read HOAPREZ. I wish I were joking. I am not joking. She stared at the Challenger like it had personally insulted her family. Then she looked at me, then back at the car, then back at me. That's quite a vehicle for a residential community. I smiled. Thanks. She's a handful. The parking structure has a noise ordinance after 9 p.m. I'll keep that in mind. And the window tint, is that legal? It was when I bought it. She scribbled something on her clipboard, didn't say goodbye, didn't welcome me to the neighborhood, just turned on her orthopedic sneakers and marched toward the elevator, the click of her pen echoing off the concrete like a tiny, judgmental metronome. Within 48 hours, Shelley Prescott had canvassed every neighbor within 3 units of mine. I know this because June Whitaker, retired schoolteacher, Unit 151, sweet as pecan pie and sharp as a box cutter, knocked on my door with a casserole and a warning. That woman asked me if you had face tattoos, June said. I told her you looked like a youth pastor. She didn't care for that answer.
Shelley had already built her theory.
Black car, tinted windows, man who comes and goes at strange hours, doesn't talk about his job, must be a drug dealer, must be a criminal, must be a threat to the pristine beige-on-beige sanctity of Summit Pines Estates. She started watching my parking spot the way a hawk watches a field mouse, and I had no idea. Not yet. 2 weeks after we moved in, I came down to the garage on a Tuesday morning. 6:15 a.m. Thin Colorado air, cold enough to see my breath even underground. The fluorescent lights hummed their sick yellow hum. I hit the key fob. The Challenger chirped. And that's when I saw it. A yellow slip of paper on my dashboard. Inside the car, behind the windshield. Folded once, tucked neatly against the base of the rearview mirror. I opened the door. The slip read, Notice of violation. Window tint exceeds community aesthetic standards. Remedy within 14 days or face fine of $200. It was printed on official HOA letterhead. Signed by Shelley Prescott, President, Summit Pines Estates Homeowners Association. Dated that morning. The note was inside my locked car. Let that marinate for a second. I sat in the driver's seat and looked around. The glove box was cracked open. I always close it. Always. The center console lid was shifted a 1/4 inch to the left. Someone had been through my things. Someone with a key. And then I caught it. A smell. Heavy, floral, aggressive. The kind of perfume that arrives in a room 4 seconds before the woman wearing it. It clung to the leather seats like a stain. Shelley Prescott's signature scent. I'd smelled it in the elevator. I'd smelled it in the lobby. And now, I was smelling it in my personal vehicle. I went to the HOA office that afternoon. Shelley sat behind a desk cluttered with binders, sticky notes, and a framed photo of herself cutting a ribbon at the community pool. She smiled the way a crocodile smiles. Mr. Mercer, what can I do for you? Someone entered my vehicle last night and left a violation notice inside. The CC and Rs grant emergency access to parking structures and vehicles stored within. Emergency access for window tint. Aesthetic compliance is a community emergency, Mr. Mercer. I went home and pulled up the CC and Rs on my laptop. Read every single page, all 67 of them. The covenants granted HOA representatives access to the parking structure and common areas for maintenance and safety inspections. Parking structure access, not vehicle access. Not let yourself into someone's private property because you don't like their window tint. There was no clause, not one sentence, not one word, that authorized anyone to enter a privately owned vehicle. Shelley Prescott had made that part up. She'd invented a power and then used it on a Tuesday morning before sunrise. I checked my dash cam footage. There she was, 5:52 a.m., master key in hand. She tried the door. It didn't open, so she tried the trunk release. That didn't work either. Then she pulled out a Slim Jim, an HOA president, carrying a Slim Jim in her blazer pocket like it was a ballpoint pen. She worked the driver's door for 90 seconds until it popped, climbed halfway inside, opened the glove box, rifled through the console, took 4 photographs with her phone, left the violation notice, climbed out, locked the door, incorrectly, which is how I'd noticed in the first place. Then she walked away, heels clicking on concrete, clipboard under her arm, not a shred of doubt on her face. Here's what Shelley Prescott didn't know. In Colorado, unauthorized entry into a motor vehicle is a Class 1 misdemeanor under CRS 18-4-502. Doesn't matter if you have a master key. Doesn't matter if you're the queen of the homeowners association. You enter someone's locked car without their consent. That is criminal trespass to a motor vehicle. Period. The penalty is up to 18 months in county jail and a $5,000 fine per incident. Shelley had racked up, at that point, 14 entries, 14 misdemeanors, exposed to 21 years and $70,000 in fines for leaving sticky notes about window tint. I could have ended it right there. Badge out, cuffs on, call Arapahoe County Sheriff. But here's the thing about being a marshal. You learn patience. You learn that the biggest cases aren't built on the first crime. They're built on the pattern. So I let her keep going. I upgraded my dash cam to 4K, added a motion sensor, and I waited. Shelley didn't just keep going. She accelerated. By week 3, she'd entered my car 6 more times. She found my gym bag in the trunk. She found my work radio under the seat. And then, she found the gear bag. The black duffel I kept in the trunk because I never knew when a fugitive call-out would come. Inside that bag sat a bulletproof vest with U.S. Marshal stenciled on the back, a handheld radio, flex cuffs, a flashlight, and a set of binoculars. Standard kit. Every deputy in my office carried the same bag. Now, you or I would see that bag and think, law enforcement. Shelley Prescott saw that bag and thought, cartel. She called the police, not the HOA security line, not the non-emergency number. She dialed 911. There are suspicious tactical weapons and surveillance equipment stored in a vehicle in our parking garage, she told the dispatcher. I believe the resident may be involved in organized criminal activity. There's a child in the home. 2 Arapahoe County patrol officers knocked on my door at 8 p.m. Nora was giving Lily a bath. I answered in sweatpants and a Broncos hoodie. Sir, we received a report about weapons in your vehicle. I reached into the kitchen drawer, pulled out my credential case, and flipped it open. Gold Star, Department of Justice, United States Marshal Service. The older officer's eyebrows went up. The younger one actually took a step back. Deputy Mercer, sorry to bother you. No bother. I'd appreciate it if you didn't share my position with the complainant. Operational security. Understood. Have a good evening, Deputy. They left. I watched from the window as Shelley intercepted them in the parking lot. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see it. She was pointing at my unit, gesturing wildly. The officers shook their heads, got in their cruiser, and drove away. Shelley stood alone under the garage lights, clipboard clutched to her chest, mouth hanging open like a trout on a riverbank. She interpreted the visit exactly backward. In her mind, the police had come, seen the weapons, and left without arresting me, which meant I was either too dangerous to arrest or too connected to touch. Her paranoia didn't deflate, it inflated. It went from party balloon to Goodyear blimp. The email hit every inbox in Summit Pines the next morning. Subject line in all caps. Security alert. Suspicious equipment in vehicle, number 147. The body was 3 paragraphs of thinly veiled accusation. She didn't use my name. She used my parking spot number, which anyone could cross-reference with the resident directory. She described military-grade tactical equipment and surveillance devices and a vehicle designed to evade law enforcement detection. She recommended that residents exercise heightened vigilance and report any unusual activity associated with Unit 139. The fallout was immediate. 2 parents at Lily's elementary school stopped letting their kids sit with her at lunch. Nora got a cold shoulder from the carpool group. A woman she'd never met pulled her aside at pickup and whispered, "Is everything okay at home? Do you need help?" As if Nora were trapped in a Breaking Bad subplot. Then my car got keyed. A long, deliberate scratch down the entire driver's side, door to quarter panel, deep enough to hit primer. I found it under the fluorescent garage lights, that sick yellow glow turning the raw metal edge into a thin silver scar against the black paint. No cameras covered that angle. No witnesses. No proof. But the scratch smelled faintly of floral perfume. Heavy. Aggressive. Unmistakable. That night, Lily climbed into Nora's lap during dinner. She was quiet for a minute. Then she looked up with those big brown eyes. "Mommy, why did Mrs. Prescott say Daddy is dangerous?" Nora looked at me across the table. I set my fork down. The thin, cold Colorado air leaked through the kitchen window. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. "She didn't mean it, baby," Nora said. But Shelley had meant every word. And now she'd put my daughter's name in her mouth. The patience I'd cultivated over 11 years of fugitive work was still intact, but it had grown teeth. 3 days later, I came down to the garage and found a Denver boot clamped to the front driver's side wheel of the Challenger. Bright yellow, industrial grade. The kind of thing you see on abandoned cars in airport long-term parking, not on a 700 horsepower muscle car in a suburban garage. A laminated notice dangled from the clamp by a zip tie. Vehicle impound. Failure to comply with aesthetic standards. Fine, $500. Additional $50 per day until resolved. Contact HOA office for release. I crouched beside the wheel. The boot was heavy. Commercial-grade steel. Serious locking mechanism. Not the cheap kind you buy at Harbor Freight. This was an $800 piece of equipment. I ran my hand along the cold metal and felt the weight of it. The garage smelled like pine sap drifting through the ventilation shafts from the foothills, mixed with concrete dust and motor oil. The fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead. Somewhere, 2 levels up, a car door slammed and echoed down through the structure like a gunshot. I photographed everything, every angle, the boot, the notice, the zip tie, the lock mechanism, the serial number stamped into the steel. I took a close-up of that. I did not remove the boot. Removing it would have been easy. I had bolt cutters in my garage storage unit. But removing evidence is what amateurs do. I was building a case. Then Shelley played her ugliest card. She called Child Protective Services. The complaint alleged that military weapons and tactical equipment were stored within feet of a children's playground entrance, and that a 6-year-old child has unrestricted access to dangerous materials. The playground was on the opposite side of the complex from the garage. My gear bag was locked in the trunk of a locked car in a secured parking structure. But CPS has to investigate every complaint. That's the law. So an investigator came to our home. She was professional, thorough, kind even. She toured the house. She saw Lily's room. Pink walls, stuffed animals, a bookshelf full of picture books. She saw the kitchen, fridge stocked, no hazards. She saw Lily herself, happy, healthy, fed, loved, showing the investigator her crayon drawing of a horse with 6 legs. The investigator closed the case on the spot. Unfounded, no concerns. But Nora broke. Not in front of the investigator, not in front of Lily. Later, after bedtime. She sat on the edge of our bed, still in her scrubs from a 12-hour ER shift, and the tears just came. Silent at first, then shaking. "We moved here for a fresh start, Colton. Mountains and good schools. That's what you said." "I know." She called CPS on us, on Lily, because of a car. "I know." How much longer? I sat beside her, put my arm around her shoulders. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and Lily's white noise machine down the hall. Not much longer. That night, I traced the serial number on the Denver boot. Commercial product, sold exclusively to municipal parking authorities and licensed towing companies, not available for residential purchase. I found the distributor, a company out of Grand Junction, and called the next morning. Polite, professional. "I'm verifying a purchase for an investigation. The boot had been purchased 4 months prior by an entity called Summit Property Services, LLC. Paid by company check. Delivered to a P.O. box in Centennial, Colorado. Summit Property Services, LLC. I'd never heard of it. Neither had anyone else in the HOA. So I filed a CORA request. Colorado Open Records Act. Most people don't know this, but if your HOA is registered as a nonprofit, and Summit Pines was, then their financial records are subject to public disclosure. They must produce them within 10 business days. No exceptions, no excuses. I submitted the request by certified mail, with a copy to the HOA's registered agent. Then I waited. 9 days later, a manila envelope arrived at my door, thick, heavy. I opened it on the kitchen table after Lily went to bed. What I found inside was a masterpiece of small-time grift. Vernon Prescott, Shelley's husband, the HOA treasurer, quiet as a church mouse and twice as forgettable, had set up Summit Property Services LLC 18 months after Shelley became president. The company's registered address was a UPS store mailbox. Its sole employee was Vernon himself, and its sole client was Summit Pines Estates HOA. Over 5 years, Summit Property Services had invoiced the HOA for parking enforcement equipment, compliance monitoring services, landscape assessment consulting, and structural integrity surveys. The invoices were beautiful: professional letterhead, itemized charges, net 30 terms, and every single one was fiction. $63,000 in fabricated fines, levied against residents, collected by the HOA, and funneled through the shell company back to the Prescotts. $28,000 in fake purchases, including the $800 Denver boot currently decorating my Challenger's wheel. The numbers were neat. Vernon was an accountant, after all. He kept meticulous records of his own fraud. But the real story was in the pattern. Over those 5 years, 4 families had been driven out of Summit Pines, harassed with violations, buried in fines, threatened with liens. One was a veteran on a fixed income who couldn't afford to fight. Another was a single mother of 3 who sold at a loss just to escape. In each case, after the family left and the property sat vacant long enough to drop in value, the Prescotts, through a separate LLC, naturally, purchased the foreclosed unit at below market price. They now own 3 rental properties in the community where Shelley served as president and Vernon controlled the treasury. I spread the documents across the kitchen table: bank statements, invoices, property records, transfer deeds. 5 years of fraud, harassment, and predatory acquisition, all documented in Vernon's tidy accountant handwriting. This wasn't just an HOA president with a power complex. This was a criminal enterprise, and Shelley Prescott had just spent the last month breaking into the car of the one person in Summit Pines who could dismantle the entire thing. I stacked the papers neatly, put them back in the envelope, and for the first time since we'd moved to Colorado, I smiled. The smile lasted about 4 seconds. Then the work began. I drove to a car audio shop in Lakewood the next morning. Not the kind with neon signs and thumping subwoofers in the window. The kind with a locked door, a buzzer, and a guy named Clint who did installation work for 3 different law enforcement agencies. I told him what I needed. He didn't ask why. The dash cam he installed was a dual lens unit, hardwired into the Challenger's electrical system. Front and rear, 4K resolution, infrared night vision, motion activated with a 2-second wake time. The housing was built into the rear view mirror mount, flush, black, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. But the real magic was the cellular uplink. Every 30 seconds of footage uploaded automatically to an encrypted cloud server. Delete the camera, smash the camera, throw it in a wood chipper. The footage was already gone, already safe, already admissible. Clint finished the install in 2 hours. I paid cash, shook his hand, drove home in the afternoon sun with the Rockies glowing purple against the western sky, and the supercharger whining softly at idle, like a dog that knows it's about to be let off the leash. That evening, I sat in my home office and started making calls. The displaced families. It took 3 days to track down all 4. The veteran, Harlan Pruitt, 71, Army, 2 tours in Vietnam, was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Aurora. His voice cracked when I told him what I'd found. She said I owed $9,000 in fines, he said, for a flagpole, an American flag on a flagpole. I couldn't afford a lawyer. The single mother, Danielle Corwin, had moved her 3 kids to Pueblo. She'd sold her unit for $40,000 below market value. The Prescotts bought it 6 weeks later through their second LLC. I got sworn affidavits from all 4 families, notarized, time-stamped. Each one a brick in the wall I was building around the Prescotts. Then I called the FBI, specifically the Financial Crimes Unit out of the Denver field office. I'd worked joint operations with 2 of their agents on a fugitive case the year before. Professional courtesy goes a long way in federal law enforcement. I laid it out. Vernon's Shell Company. The fabricated invoices sent electronically. Wire fraud. Title 18, Section 1343. The fine notices sent through the United States Postal Service. Mail fraud. Title 18, Section 1341. The pattern of harassment designed to force property sales at below market prices. The agents listened, asked questions, took notes, and then one of them said the 6 words every investigator wants to hear. We'd like to open a case. Meanwhile, I coordinated with the Arapahoe County District Attorney's Office on state charges: vehicle tampering, criminal mischief for the keying, theft by deception for the boot and the fake fines, and 23 counts of criminal trespass to a motor vehicle, each one a Class 1 misdemeanor, each one carrying up to 18 months. The math was staggering, but it was accurate. Here's something most people don't know. In Colorado, filing a knowingly false report with Child Protective Services is a Class 3 misdemeanor under CRS 19-3-304. On its own, it's a slap on the wrist, but combine it with a documented pattern of harassment, the emails, the manufactured violations, the property searches, the police calls, and you're looking at stalking charges under CRS 18-3602. That's a Class 5 felony, up to 3 years in state prison. I built the timeline on a legal pad. 23 vehicle entries, 1 Denver boot, 1 keying incident, 1 false CPS report, 1 mass email defaming a federal officer, $63,000 in fabricated fines, $28,000 in sham purchases, 4 families displaced, 2 properties acquired through coercion. I filled 6 pages, front and back. It was 2 a.m. when I finished. The house was dark, except for the desk lamp. Nora appeared in the doorway in her scrubs. She'd just gotten home from a night shift. She didn't say anything, just set a mug of coffee on the desk, kissed the top of my head, and looked at the stack of bank records and affidavits spreading across the table like a paper avalanche. "Almost there?" she asked. "Almost." She went to bed. I picked up the phone and called the assistant U.S. attorney I'd worked with on 3 fugitive cases. Asked him one question. He said yes. I filed for a federal arrest warrant the next morning. Both names, Shelley Prescott, Vernon Prescott. The trap was built. All it needed now was bait. And Shelley Prescott had never met a piece of bait she didn't take. She took it on a Thursday, 6:12 a.m. The new dash cam caught everything. The garage was quiet. That particular pre-dawn stillness where the concrete seems to hold its breath. The fluorescent lights buzzed their eternal yellow hymn. And there came Shelley, white blazer, clipboard, master key. Same routine, same confidence, same absolute certainty that she was the law and everyone else was a suggestion. She tried the master key on the driver's door. It didn't work. It had never worked. But Shelley was nothing if not persistent. She pulled out the Slim Jim, same one, same blazer pocket, and worked the lock. 90 seconds. Pop. She was in. She rifled through the glove box first. Nothing new. Console. Nothing new. Then she spotted it. The dash cam. That little black lens nestled in the rearview mirror housing, its red recording light pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Her face filled the frame. 4K resolution. Every pore. Every crease of fury around her mouth. The camera's microphone picked up everything with studio clarity. "He's recording me," she whispered. Then louder, "He's been recording me this whole time, in a shared facility. That's illegal. That is illegal surveillance." She grabbed the camera housing and yanked. The mount held. She yanked harder. Plastic cracked. Wires snapped. She ripped the unit free, trailing a ribbon of cable like an umbilical cord. She stared at it in her hand. Then she looked directly into the lens, which was still recording, still uploading, still sending every frame to a server she would never find, and said 6 words that would play beautifully in a courtroom. "I will bury that man's family." She dropped the camera into my passenger side footwell. Then she searched the car for 10 more minutes, opened the trunk, checked under the seats, pulled out the floor mats. When she was done, she took the destroyed dash cam, walked to the garage trash compactor, and threw it in. She dusted her hands, straightened her blazer, and marched to the elevator with the satisfaction of a woman who had just solved a problem. The problem, of course, was already solved. The footage was on a server in Virginia, backed up twice, encrypted, time-stamped, and featuring a lovely close-up of Shelley Prescott threatening to bury a U.S. Marshal's family while standing inside his car without permission. Vernon moved fast. Within 48 hours, a cease and desist letter arrived from a law firm in Cherry Creek. It accused me of illegal surveillance in a shared residential facility and demanded I remove all recording devices from common areas immediately. The letter was printed on expensive paper. It smelled like leather and desperation.
3 days after that, Shelley filed for a temporary restraining order.
She told the judge I was stalking her with hidden cameras and creating an atmosphere of intimidation and fear. The irony was so thick you could have spread it on toast.
The hearing was brief.
My attorney, a former assistant United States attorney named Colleen Stark, who owed me a favor from a witness protection case, presented the judge with a 2-inch binder, dashcam footage, vehicle entry logs, the CPS complaint, the mass email, the Denver boot receipt from Vernon's shell company. The judge reviewed it for 11 minutes, denied the restraining order, and told Shelley's counsel to advise your client to seek her own legal representation for what appears to be a rather serious situation.
But here's the twist I didn't see coming.
Vernon's lawyer, the one from Cherry Creek, the one with the expensive letterhead, did a conflict check 2 days after the hearing. Standard procedure. He ran my name through the system, and then, without explanation, he withdrew from representation. Just quit. Filed a motion to withdraw, cited irreconcilable professional conflict, and vanished. Vernon called 6 other attorneys that week. I know because Colleen told me. The legal community in Denver is smaller than people think. Word travels. Not about case details, attorneys are careful about that, but about the general shape of trouble. And the shape of Vernon's trouble was starting to look a lot like a federal indictment. He couldn't figure out why nobody would take his case. He didn't know my name yet, not my real title anyway. All he knew was that the man in Unit 139 drove a black car, had a pretty wife and a little girl, and had somehow turned his life into a legal nightmare.
Welcome to the club, Vernon.
Membership is involuntary.
Shelley responded to the restraining order denial the way she responded to every setback.
She escalated. She printed a petition. Official HOA letterhead, bold font at the top. Petition to remove the Mercer family for community safety violations. Below that, 30 lines for signatures. Below that, a paragraph explaining that the Mercer household poses an ongoing threat to community well-being due to confirmed surveillance activity, documented weapons storage, and an active federal investigation. An active federal investigation. She was right about that part. She just had the target wrong. She went door to door, every unit in Summit Pines, 180 homes. She knocked on each one wearing her white blazer with the HOA pin on the lapel, clipboard in hand, reading glasses perched on the end of her nose like a librarian sentencing you to overdue fines. She told each family a slightly different version of the story. To the Hendersons in Unit 12, I was under investigation by the ATF. To the Bowmans in Unit 57, I was connected to a cartel operating out of Commerce City. To old Edie Fontaine in Unit 90, I said, possibly in witness protection, which means his enemies could find us all. The creativity was almost admirable. Almost. Then she called Lily's school, Arapahoe Ridge Elementary. She asked for the principal, a patient woman named Dr. Sandoval, and told her that unregistered firearms and military equipment were being stored in close proximity to children at the Mercer residence. She described me as potentially violent and evasive about his occupation. She recommended that the school take appropriate measures to ensure student safety. Dr. Sandoval called Nora, not me, Nora, who was in the middle of an ER shift, elbow deep in a multi-car accident with 3 critical patients. Nora left the hospital, left her patients with the attending, drove to the school in her blood-flecked scrubs with her hair still in a surgical cap. She sat in the principal's office and explained, as calmly as she could, that her husband was a federal law enforcement officer, and that the woman making these calls was the subject of an active investigation. Dr. Sandoval was horrified, not at us, at the situation. She assured Nora that Lily was safe, that the school took no action based on anonymous complaints, and that she would document the call in case it was needed later. Nora drove home. She didn't go back to the ER. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface, staring at nothing. That evening, I found the first note, taped to our front door. Block letters on white paper. One word, leave. There was another one the next morning. Same paper, same block letters. Not welcome. And a third one that afternoon, tucked under the doormat. We know what you are. I collected each one with gloves, bagged them, photographed the tape residue on the door. The paper was standard copy stock, Staples brand, 20-pound weight. The ink was from an inkjet printer. The letters were careful, deliberate, and dripping with the kind of cowardice that only comes from people who believe they're righteous. Lily found the fourth note before I did. It was stuck to the mailbox at kid height. She pulled it off and held it up, sounding out the letters the way first graders do, her little forehead wrinkled in concentration. Daddy, what does DANGER mean? Nora took it from her hands, gently, the way you take a sharp object from a child. She folded it without reading the rest and slipped it into her pocket. It's nothing, baby. Junk mail. Lily looked up at her, then at me. Those brown eyes that missed nothing. Okay, she said, and went back to coloring. I stood in the doorway and felt something shift. Not anger. I'd been angry for weeks. This was colder, quieter. The kind of feeling that settles into your bones when you realize the operation isn't just professional anymore. It's personal. And personal operations have a different kind of fuel. The warrant was signed. Federal. Both names. The operation was scheduled for 6 days out. The HOA annual meeting. 120 residents in one room. Every camera rolling. Maximum impact. Maximum accountability. I could have arrested them at home. Quietly. Professionally. But Shelley had spent 7 years performing her authority in public. It seemed only fair that she lose it the same way. That night, my doorbell rang at 9 p.m. I checked the peephole. June Whitaker, retired school teacher, Unit 151. The woman who'd brought us a casserole on day 1 and warned me about Shelley's face tattoo interrogation. She stood on my porch holding a composition notebook, the old-fashioned kind, black and white marbled cover, college ruled. She looked nervous. She looked determined. I should have brought this to you sooner, she said. I invited her in. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd spread Vernon's financial records, now cleared and wiped clean. She set the notebook between us and opened it. 47 entries, 3 years of documentation, every entry dated, timed, and written in the precise, careful handwriting of a woman who'd spent 30 years grading student essays. She'd recorded Shelley's behavior with the discipline of a field researcher and the moral clarity of someone who knew wrong when she saw it. Entry 1. Shelley telling the maintenance crew to accidentally damage the garden boxes of a resident who'd complained about dues. Entry 14. Vernon billing the HOA for a fire safety inspection that never occurred. Entry 29. Shelley threatening to have a resident's car towed for parking in their own assigned spot because she wanted the spot for a visitor. Entry 47. Shelley telling a board member that if he voted against her budget proposal, she'd find something wrong with his unit that would make his mortgage company very nervous. June closed the notebook and pushed it across the table. I was afraid of her, June said. For 3 years I was afraid, but I watched what she's doing to your family, to that little girl, and I decided I'm not afraid anymore. I looked at the notebook, then at June. Her hands were folded in her lap, steady as stone. This changes everything, I said. Good. It was supposed to. She left the same way she'd come. Quiet. Certain. A retired school teacher who just handed a federal officer the final piece of a case that was about to reshape an entire community. I added her notebook to the evidence binder. Entry 48 would be written by the FBI. 6 days. The annual meeting was in 6 days. The community center at Summit Pines sat at the eastern edge of the complex, between the pool house and the maintenance building. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige folding chairs arranged in rows of 10. A long table at the front with a microphone, a water pitcher, and a projector screen that Shelley used every year for her PowerPoint presentation about landscaping budgets and parking violations. The room smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee from the urn someone had plugged in 2 hours too early. 120 residents filed in. Couples, singles, retirees, young families with fidgeting kids. They took their beige chairs and made small talk about sprinkler schedules and pool hours, and whether the new speed bumps on Summit Drive were too aggressive. Normal, mundane. The kind of civic minutia that makes HOA meetings the most boring event in American life. Shelley sat at the center of the front table. White blazer, HOA pin, reading glasses, clipboard. Vernon to her left, quiet as always, scrolling through his phone with the detached calm of a man who had no idea that 2 FBI agents were sitting in an unmarked sedan in the parking lot. Shelley tapped the microphone. "Good evening, Summit Pines. Thank you all for being here." She launched into her re-election speech. 7 years of dedicated service. 7 years of protecting property values. 7 years of making the hard decisions so you don't have to. She clicked through her slides, bar graphs showing increased property values, pie charts of budget allocation, before and after photos of the xeriscaped common areas she'd championed. It was polished, practiced, the kind of performance that relied on nobody in the audience knowing the real numbers. "I've kept this community safe for 7 years, she said, smiling at the crowd. "And I'm asking for your trust for 7 more. She opened the floor for questions. Hands went up. A woman asked about the pool renovation timeline. A man asked about guest parking enforcement. Routine. Boring. Safe. Then I raised my hand. Shelley saw me. Her smile flickered. Just a fraction. A tremor at the edge of her mouth that no one else would have noticed. But I'd spent 11 years reading faces through car windows and screen doors and the narrow gap of a barely opened front door. I noticed. "Mr. Mercer, you have a question?" "More of a presentation, actually." I stood. "With the board's permission, I'd like to use the projector." "That's not on the agenda. It won't take long." She looked at Vernon. Vernon looked at his phone. The room was quiet. 120 pairs of eyes shifted between Shelley and me. I walked to the front of the room, plugged my laptop into the projector, and clicked play. The first clip filled the screen. Timestamp, 5:52 a.m. Tuesday, March 14th. Shelley Prescott, white blazer, clipboard, master key, approaching a blacked-out Dodge Challenger. She tries the key. It doesn't work. She pulls out a Slim Jim, works the door. 90 seconds. Pop. She's inside. Gasps. Real gasps. Not polite surprise. The involuntary, gut-level sound of 100 people seeing something they cannot unsee. I played the second clip, and the third, and the fourth. 23 clips in total. 23 mornings. The same woman, the same car, the same unauthorized entry. Some clips showed her rifling through the glove box. Others showed her photographing the interior with her phone. One showed her sniffing the seats, actually pressing her nose to the leather and inhaling, like a bloodhound in orthopedic sneakers. Then I played the dashcam clip from Thursday. The new camera, 4K, full audio. Shelley discovering the lens, ripping it out. And then, in crystal clarity, her voice filling the community center through the projector speakers. "I will bury that man's family." The room was silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on your chest. A child coughed somewhere in the back. A chair creaked. Nothing else. Shelley stood up. "That is community oversight. I have the authority to inspect." "You don't," I said, "and we both know it." I clicked to the next slide. Vernon's shell company. Summit Property Services, LLC. Registration documents, bank statements, 5 years of fabricated invoices, $63,000 in fake fines funneled back to the Prescotts, $28,000 in sham purchases, 4 families driven out, 2 properties acquired at below market prices by a second LLC, also registered to Vernon. The murmurs started. Low, angry, growing. Harlan Pruitt was in the audience. He'd driven up from Aurora. His hands were shaking. Danielle Corwin was watching from a video call on my phone, propped against the water pitcher. Vernon stood. He didn't say a word. He just picked up his phone, turned toward the side door and walked. 2 steps, 3, 4. He stopped. 2 people stood in the doorway. Dark suits, credentials visible on their belts. FBI, Financial Crimes Unit. They didn't move. They didn't need to. Vernon turned back toward the room. His face had gone the color of old paste. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my credential case. Gold Star, Department of Justice, United States Marshal Service. I held it up so the front row could see it, then the second row, then the whole room. Mrs. Prescott, I said, my name is Deputy United States Marshal Colton Mercer. I've watched you open my car door 23 times. This time, I'm opening yours. The FBI agents moved in, one toward Shelley, one toward Vernon. Handcuffs caught the fluorescent light as they clicked open, that familiar metallic snap that I'd heard 1,000 times on 1,000 operations, but that had never sounded quite this satisfying. Shelley's mouth opened, closed, opened again. For the first time in 7 years, no words came out. They cuffed her hands behind her back. She turned as the agent guided her toward the door, and she passed the projector screen, still glowing, still showing her face inside my car. Her own image watched her leave. Someone in the back of the room started clapping, then someone else, then the whole room, a standing ovation. For a Tuesday night HOA meeting in a beige community center in Arapahoe County, Colorado. That might be a first in the history of American home ownership. The federal grand jury handed down indictments 6 weeks later. Shelley Prescott, wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, stalking, criminal mischief, 23 counts of vehicle trespass, filing a false CPS report. Sentencing range, 12 to 15 years. Vernon Prescott, wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit theft by deception, money laundering. Sentencing range, 8 to 10 years. Their attorneys, they finally found attorneys, 2 from Colorado Springs who specialized in lost causes, entered not guilty pleas. The trial was set for October. The court ordered full restitution, $63,000 returned to the residents of Summit Pines. Every fabricated fine, every fraudulent charge. The money came from the Prescott's personal accounts, which were frozen the morning of the arrest, and from the sale of the 2 properties they'd acquired through coercion. Harlan Pruitt got his $9,000 back. Danielle Corwin got compensated for the $40,000 she'd lost selling under duress. 2 of the 4 displaced families moved back. Harlan was one of them. He showed up on move-in day with the same flagpole and the same American flag. He planted it in the front garden of his old unit, which the new board had returned to him at the original sale price, and stood back to watch it catch the morning wind coming off the foothills. The new board was elected unanimously, 5 members. Transparent finances posted monthly on the community website, an independent auditor hired to review the books every quarter, and a new policy, written into the amended CC&Rs by resident vote, that no HOA representative, under any circumstances, for any reason, would ever possess or use a master key to access a privately owned vehicle. The vote was 173 to 0. I started something that fall, a small nonprofit called the Summit Fund, legal aid for HOA abuse victims across Colorado. Pro bono attorneys, forensic accountants, template Cora requests, a hotline. Because Shelley Prescott wasn't unique, she was a type. Every state in this country has a Shelley Prescott, someone who takes a volunteer position and turns it into a personal fiefdom, someone who confuses a clipboard with a crown. The Summit Fund exists to remind those people that crowns can be removed. 6 months after the arrest, on a Saturday morning in September, I was in the driveway washing the Challenger. Warm sun, clear sky, the Rockies glowing in that particular shade of blue gold that only happens in Colorado in early fall, when the aspens are just starting to turn, and the air smells like pine and possibility. Lily stood beside me in rain boots and a swimsuit, holding a sponge the size of her torso,
scrubbing the front bumper with the intense focus of a 6-year-old who believes she is helping. Soap bubbles drifted across the driveway. She was singing something, made-up words, a melody only she understood. Nora came out the front door carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to me, leaned against the garage door frame, watched Lily attack the wheel well with her sponge. "The scratch is gone," Nora said. I looked. She was right. The body shop had matched the paint perfectly, door to quarter panel, not a trace. The long silver scar that Shelley had carved into the black paint was gone, as if it had never existed. Across the cul-de-sac, Harlan Pruitt's flag snapped in the breeze. A neighbor, the Hendersons, Unit 12, the ones Shelley had told I was ATF, walked by with their golden retriever. The husband waved. "Morning, Colton." "Morning, Doug." Lily waved too, with the sponge. Water arced across the driveway and hit the dog. The dog loved it. Everyone laughed. The garage behind me was just a garage now. Concrete floor, assigned parking spot. No Slim Jims, no Denver boots, no anonymous notes, no perfume that didn't belong there. Just a parking space where a car lived, and a family that had earned the right to stay. I wrung out the chamois and started on the hood. The supercharger gleamed under the soap like a beating heart. If your HOA has ever made you feel like a criminal in your own home, if someone with a clipboard and a master key has ever crossed the line, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, because you might be sitting on a case you don't even know you have. And sometimes the person who can help is closer than you think. If this story hit home, smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And stay tuned, because next week, we've got a story about a retired firefighter whose HOA tried to demolish his wheelchair ramp. They didn't know his daughter was a civil rights attorney. That one gets loud. Until next time, stay sharp, know your rights, and never let anyone with a clipboard tell you who you are.
And that's where this one lands. Not with a fist fight, not with a screaming match in a parking garage. It lands with a quiet man pressing play on a protector and letting the footage speak for itself. Sally Prescott didn't fall because she messed with the wrong car. She fell because she believed her own authority was absolute. She thought a master key gave her the right to enter any vehicle. She thought a clipboard made her judge and jury. She thought the tin's windows means crime, and that her assumptions were enough to justify anything. The real lesson here is documentation. Colston didn't lose his temper. He didn't confront her. He installed camera, file records requests, and let her use the case against herself. 3 entries, 23 misdemeanors, all on video. Every lie she told became evidence. Every email she sent became a count. If someone in your HOA has ever crossed the line into your property, your car, your personal space, and told you it was their right, I want to hear about it. Drop the story in the comments and hit subscribe, because next week we got a retired firefighter whose HOA tried to demolish his wheelchair ramp. They didn't know his daughter was a civil rights attorney.